This is an AVNation ISE special. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. What we're doing is we're previewing Integrated Systems Europe 2019, as crazy as that sounds. It comes your way February 5th through the 8th in February, and from the beautiful Brai in Amsterdam. With me today, I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Terry Friesenborg. He is the Chief Global Officer for AVIXA. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
And I thank you. You've been there from the start. You were there when AVIXA, then Infocom, as well as NSCA and CDA got together to launch ISE.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things you've seen? Kind of the changes you've seen over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been the growth.
Yeah.
Our first show in Geneva, there were a total of 3,000 people there. And we were seriously thinking about just going out on the street and grabbing people and hauling them in. It was an inauspicious beginning to what has become an amazing show. We did over 80,000 last year, and we're ahead on registration this year. So it's really grown from something that was precarious and might not have really come to fruition. A lot of our exhibitors stuck with us. The industry believed there was a purpose for having a show in Europe. And, now we're the largest pro AV and residential AV show in the world. So we're very proud of that accomplishment and the growth that has taken place. Beyond just the size, too, I think the other amazing thing about it is just how international the show is. We had people from over 175 countries at the show in 2018. So if you think about it, I think the UN recognizes around 200 countries. So we're not far from a completely global show. Which is also something we're really proud
of. What have you attributed the growth and the popularity of it over the last few years?
Well, I could say it was just because we were so brilliant, but that would not be true. It's really the industry. It's the industry that's been growing, and we have been keeping pace with that. As the industry has become closer and closer to IT in terms of signal transport, it's simply flourished. Everywhere you go, you see AV. Whether you're standing in line at a fast food store, to getting on an airplane, to the traditional things in conference rooms and stadiums and all the other places we typically associate AV, it is ubiquitous. And I believe that's been part and parcel of our growth as well. And I think the other piece too is that being in a relatively small domestic market like the Netherlands, you're not a domestic show. You must be an international event. And I think that's had a lot to do with the ability for us to grow internationally as we have. That coupled with the EU's openness, if you will, for people coming in and going to trade shows, those have been factors that have helped us grow. And you look at how we've expanded in terms of technology set, even in 2004, it was still relatively limited to what we would think of as traditional AV. Now, certainly that is not the case. You see all kinds of things in visual display, but also just in lighting in general. And we're anxious to grow the show even more. 19 will be larger by both, I believe, by attendance and also by floor space. Although, as you know, at the RAI, we're really running out of that floor space. We're inventing every little corner we can to fulfill the needs this year. And although we hate to leave, of course, and 19 will be another wonderful year, as will 20 be in Amsterdam. We're looking forward to that growth opportunity when we move to Barcelona in 21 as well.
Well, and Barcelona also gives you the same benefits as the Netherlands does, in the fact that it's still in the EU, right?
Right.
And it does give you the eliminates the domestic show. I mean, not that there aren't Spanish audio visual companies, but there are certainly going to be folks from in and around the EU, and like you said, the other 175 countries that are already going.
Yes, it's well positioned. And I think, like Amsterdam, it's an arts-oriented city, architecturally oriented, cutting edge kind of city. I think it fits with who we are as an association from an AVIXA perspective, who the show is, and who the industry is. So we were pleased with that. But we've got 2 great years to be in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And Amsterdam's been our home for a long time. We, I think, owe a lot to Amsterdam as a place that we could grow up. So we appreciate everything they've done for us. And if you could just double the size of the RAI, believe me, we'd be there.
Yeah, that
We're
would take some,
trying,
that would
not that we're
take some
not building
doing.
a bunch of
No,
new.
no, you are definitely trying. I remember my first ISE. I was flabbergasted at the fact that there were 12 halls, and never having been to the RAI. You
Mhm.
know, as a kid from St. Louis, I'm trying to visualize this in my head, and talking with Mike Blackman from ISE and talking with the folks from AVIXA. They're trying to help me kind of get my bearings. And finally, Mr. Blackman just said, "Look, you just got to step into the place. You just have to step in, and once you do, you'll understand what we're talking about." And he's not wrong, right? Because of the several different halls and the interconnectedness of them. I mean, yes, there are several halls that are next to each other, so two flows into
Mhm.
one, and six flows into seven, and so those make sense. But you guys have utilized every single space, and this year there's 15, right?
Right, right,
The first
right.
year I went, there was 12. Now there's 15. Five actually technically has expanded even more than last year.
Yes. Yeah. It's a necessity. And certainly the RAI's very accommodating.
Yeah.
They work very hard as partners with us to make that happen. The first time we were at the RAI, we were in Hall 8, and we didn't use all of it. So if that gives you some idea of the growth
Yeah.
that we've been having, it's been quite remarkable.
Your title is Chief Global Officer, and it's a very interesting title because of the growth that AVIXA has had globally. I would say over the last 10 years. Talk
Right.
for a second about some of that. I mean, in the last 10 years, you guys have obviously grown Integrated Systems Europe, which we've been talking about, but the growth of the Infocom India show, the growth of Infocom China, the shows they're in Australia and around the world,
Hmm.
and the CTS program, and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
How have you, and you specifically, but also you as AVIXA, grown internationally in the last 10 years?
Well, it's been a realization of what was started long before I came to work for AVIXA. I'm formerly a board member, been in the industry for 20 years as an integrator and staging person before coming on board in 2000 with what was then actually we were still ICIA
I
when I
see. Yeah,
came
yeah.
on board, and then Infocom and now AVIXA. Um, and when you take a look at the path we've gone down, back in the 90s, early 90s, when the term went from the National Audiovisual Association to the International Communications Industries Association, it was about two things. One was the vision of an expanding technology set, which we've seen come to fore, although interestingly, we've come back to AV because that's our core. And also the expanding geography from the national, domestic US side to the international piece. So that was part of what I was involved with as an officer in that time period when we launched our first show in Singapore in '95. And I just saw a picture of me signing the agreement, I think in '98 for Infocom Europe, which was short-lived. But those were sort of our first fledgling reaches into the international space. When I came on board, I hired a guy in Australia and a guy in Asia, and then finally the UK. At this point, we've got offices everywhere but Africa and Antarctica. We've got a total of 11 trade shows around the world, including ISE and also the US show Infocom. But India, two in China, we launched one in Guangzhou, in Chengdu this past year, owing to China's development of the One Road, One Belt policy, which is sort of reconnecting the old Silk Road and bringing trade from Europe into China. There's so much new infrastructure going on in Western China. We felt it was important to have a show out there because that's what it's all about, is AV and how that implements and empowers that growth. We're also launching one this year, sort of back to our roots of Southeast Asia in Bangkok. And we're looking forward to that one as well in May. So, we've got 4 shows out of the Asia group. We've got 2 out of Mike's group, including Russia, and then 3 shows in Latin South America out of that group, and then 1 also in Australia integrate. So we feel that if you look where the business is, that is reasonably well established, we're in the locations that we need to be. There are other markets, obviously South Africa and Middle and Western Africa are growing. We're keeping our eye on those things. But we really try to do 2 things as AVIXA. We try to be the hub for the industry. So that point of connection where you come together, where you do take the training, the certification, you look for standards, you look for market intelligence, and all those other things that we do as an association, and then also be the catalyst for market growth, which certainly the trade shows speak to that as well. We've seen lots of growth, and if you look at our IOTA report, you see that we're in a healthy industry that continues to grow. And we're just following that along and providing a platform for our manufacturers from all over the world to come together and show their products. It's interesting. I think sometimes people think, well, they're very US-centric and they're helping US manufacturers go out. We're absolutely doing that, and in '95 that was absolutely what we were up to. But now you look at it, and we're helping a whole lot of manufacturers out of the European market, out of the Asian market, everywhere are coming together, and they're cross-pollinating into all our shows around the world. So it's exciting to see this vibrant growth in this really global community of AV professionals that we serve.
Well, it is, and you look at. I'll reference back my first trip to ISE, and I've told this story several times, and it's still one of my favorites. One of the things that I found striking at Integrated Systems Europe, I was walking through Hall 7, which Hall 7, for if you haven't been, is the audio pavilion. Right. And I in one stand was a UK manufacturer of stadium speakers, right? They're big and they're bulky, but they push out some incredible sound, right? Mm-hmm. Right next to that stand was a company from Italy who carved some of the most beautiful pieces of art out of wood that also happen to be speakers, right?
Right.
And it was incredible for me, because again, I'm just a dumb kid from St. Louis, right? I that was my first real international trip, and just meeting folks. I've been a projector screen manufacturer from Poland who had no desire to ever get into the U.S. market. They were happy, dealing with the folks in the EU, servicing the AV community in the European marketplace, and talking to them about, what are some of their strengths, what are some of their issues, what are some of the things that they love about the AV industry in their local, region. And that to me was fascinating. You look at not just ISE now, but you look at the other shows that you guys have. Yes, there are quite a few U.S. companies, but you look at Barco. Barco is out of Belgium, right? Sure. Kramer is out of Israel. You have several manufacturers that are in Spain and other parts of the world, and you look at the Chinese manufacturers as well in South Korea, and so you guys have really kind of built a good global network of manufacturers.
And what you say is fascinating, because every one of those manufacturers makes their own decision about their marketplace.
Yep.
So I was looking, and we somewhere 100 to 150 Chinese manufacturers in the U.S. show, and also in the European show, and probably about double that in the Chinese show. And so I'm thinking, well, they're all the same people. And then you start breaking that down, and oh no, they're all different people. They're the ones who are perfectly happy with the domestic market in China. It's big enough for them. That's all they want. There's some that target the U.S. There are others that don't want anything to do with the U.S. because it's an extremely competitive market. So why don't we go to Europe or Latin South America? They're all over the place. So it just talks about what a world of opportunity we really are living through right now in the AV industry. It's a great time to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to mention something. You have announced that you are retiring, not immediately, but you are retiring towards the end of 2019.
Yeah.
This next year will be kind of your farewell tour, I guess. Best way
I got the tour jacket.
Yeah. That's leather, AV on the back, have to. So first of all, thank you for your service. I mean, you've not only worked for AVIXA/Infocom/ICIA for 20 years, but you also have been a volunteer for many, many years. What is one of the things that when you first started working with the organization that you would not believe if you told yourself that, looking back?
Well, certainly where we've come. I started in this industry with a company called Twyman Films in Dayton, Ohio, no longer in existence. But out of that company came two presidents of what was then NAVA, the National Audiovisual Association, and a company that spun off that I ran for many years, Audiovisual Systems, with Jack Culp, who was also past president. So I was introduced to the association literally within the first 4 weeks of my joining the industry. I broadcast and film background in college, but that's not quite AV. You know, it's related to. You know, I'm a drummer, and so I'm the classic. You know, into audio through music and into visuals through film. So I was sent off to Bloomington, Indiana, to the University of Indiana, to the Professional Development Institute, which was a week-long course from professionals who were volunteering their time to teach young guys like me the craft. And that was remarkable. First of all, it made me believe there was actually an industry, because I was vague on that. I knew I got this job, but I wasn't sure this was a real thing. It was a real thing. Other people shared your passion, other people shared your problems, and you could talk about that. And I think that's way back then, that was all about being the hub, right? That was all about being that place that you came together. To me, the association's community. It always has been. It's where you get your chops from an educational perspective, certification perspective. It's where you get your friendships and your business relationships and how you network and grow. And it's been that for me for 40 years, 20 as a volunteer and user of the association, and 20 as a staff member. So I think that's what we do best. And that's what's fun about being involved in the international side. I live in the U.S. I'm an American through and through. But we are very much a mature society when it comes to our industry. Yeah, we're growing, we're expanding, but we've been around doing this for a long time. You get outside the States and you go to areas where AV is just a peripheral of IT because they've never seen it in any other framework. They never saw an overhead or a slide projector 60 millimeter, other than maybe, you know, in a school. So that was that transition that I went through from, you know, film to analog video to digital. They're just picking up on the digital side and running with it. So that's the exciting piece, because they don't have preconceptions. You know, they're not dragging all this baggage up and going, well, you know, we did it this way and then we got to do it. They're just going, let's do it like this, because I don't know any other way of doing it. And that's fantastic. Our show in Columbia always is remarkable in that sense. And out of Columbia have come several winners of multiple international awards for staging and for integration, because they just don't see limits to it. They just run with it. They have skunk works, and they're playing with new technologies. And, you know, in the States, you're busy. You'd like to have the time to do those things, but pretty much you're filling out bids and you're winning them, hopefully, and you're getting jobs and you're out there working. And sometimes I think there's more creativity where there's a necessity to be creative, and when you don't have those preconceptions, like I said. So that's what's just exciting, to go around and see these nascent markets and see how they're using our technologies and see how they're changing their worlds.
That'll be a good place to stop. Terry Friesenborg, thank you so much again, Chief Global Officer for AVIXA. If somebody wants to find out more about you or hang out with you this year as you do your Fair World Tour, or just want to find out more about AVIXA, how do they do that?
They go to avixa.org. They take a look there. They can find me there pretty easily. They can also find all the events, and trust me, I will be at all those shows this year. So
with his tour jacket on.
With my tour jacket on.
Yeah.
In the AVIXA booth.
In the AVIXA booth. All right. If it's specifically for the ISE one, again, February 5th through the 8th, the AVIXA booth is Hall 12 in 110. It's a big booth right there, right outside Hall 12 and Hall 13.
Yep.
So go by and see Terry. And you can follow along with us, AVNation, at avnation.tv. avnation.tv as we head to Amsterdam ourselves, February 5th through the 8th. Follow along as we, you know, hang out with Terry and go in and check out all the booths and all the over 200 new product announcements that they'll be having at Integrated Systems Europe. All that and more at avnation.tv, avnation.tv.